The sound came first, a bright, sharp flash against the dark water. A shudder ran through the steel deck of the supertanker. The massive engines coughed, sputtered, and fell silent. Power died. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. Men on the bridge shouted, their voices tight with alarm. They stared out at the sea, searching for the source of the attack. The ship, once a titan of global commerce, was now a dead weight in the water, drifting helplessly. The clock was ticking. Time was running out for the ship, for its crew, and for the global economy that depended on its cargo. This is not a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster. This is the ever-present reality of the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is a paradox of geography. It is incredibly thin, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest navigable point. This tiny gap of water separates the Persian Gulf from the Gulf of Oman and the open ocean. Satellite image of the strait with shipping lanes marked. 2 main traffic lanes are marked on the charts. One lane carries ships east, out of the Gulf. The other lane carries them west, into it. From the sterile environment of a satellite orbiting high above the Earth, the Persian Gulf appears calm, a placid blue expanse. Zoom in closer, however, and the picture changes dramatically. The waters are a hive of constant activity. Massive supertankers, some over 1,000 feet long, move like slow, majestic whales through the crowded seaways. Container ships, fishing boats, naval patrols, maritime pilots boarding and guiding, tugboats pushing and pulling, vessel traffic controllers at screens. They enforce the strict rules of the road, guiding ships through the designated traffic separation scheme, a 2-way superhighway on the water designed to prevent collisions and maintain order. The concept of a choke point is simple, rooted in basic physics. Imagine a large reservoir of water. Now, imagine that reservoir is connected to the outside world by a single, narrow pipe. The Strait of Hormuz is that pipe. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, UAE, Kuwait, the rest of the world needs that oil. To get it, ships must pass through the pipe. If you pinch that pipe even slightly, the flow of water decreases. If you block that pipe completely, the flow stops entirely. The global oil trade operates on this same fundamental principle. Ships are the medium, and they require safe, clear, and predictable waters to operate. Military blockade, terrorist attack, maritime accident. The waters of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz are ancient thoroughfares. For centuries, long before the discovery of oil, dhows with their distinctive lateen sails plied these seas. They carried pearls, spices, textiles. Connecting the civilizations of Mesopotamia, Persia, the Arabian Peninsula with India and East Africa. Great empires rose and fell, fighting for control of these lucrative trade routes. The Portuguese built forts here in the 16th century, followed by the Dutch and the British, each seeking to dominate the maritime gateway to the east. The history of the strait is a long and often bloody story of strategic competition for control of passage. The modern era, however, redefined the strait's importance entirely. The discovery of vast oil fields around the Persian Gulf in the early 20th century transformed the region and the world. As industrial economies became increasingly dependent on petroleum, the Strait of Hormuz morphed from a significant regional trade route into the world's most critical energy artery. The development of supertankers in the mid-20th century, capable of carrying millions of barrels of oil in a single voyage, solidified this new reality. Past crises have repeatedly demonstrated the strait's volatility. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the tanker war saw both sides attack commercial shipping, sending shockwaves through global oil markets and prompting intervention by international navies. The lessons from past disruptions are clear. Even the threat of closure can cause prices to spike, and a short-lived blockage can have immediate and painful effects on the world economy. The sea is not inherently safe. Its openness makes it a domain of risk. Recognizing this, a coalition of international navies implemented new Escort protocols in 2026, building on decades of maritime security operations. These rules create a protected corridor for commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Naval escorts, destroyers, naval escorts, frigates, naval escorts, corvettes. They travel in formation with convoys of tankers. They travel in formation with container ships. They establish a moving security bubble. They enforce a no-go zone for unauthorized craft. Surface radar scans the sea. Aerial drones scan the sky. Underwater sonar probes the depths. Escorts can order ships to alter course. Under strict rules, they may use force if a clear, imminent danger is detected. Yet a new, insidious danger lurks in the shadows. A growing risk, the so-called shadow fleet. A vast, murky collection of older, poorly maintained tankers, often sailing under flags of convenience from lax registration countries. These ships frequently turn off their AIS transponders, disappearing from public tracking. They perform clandestine ship-to-ship oil transfers in remote waters, creating a parallel, illicit energy market. This ghost fleet undermines international law. It also makes the strait far more dangerous and congested. The shadow fleet complicates the security picture immensely. Oil's journey from the ground to your gas tank is a marvel of modern logistics, a global production line on a colossal scale. It begins beneath the desert sands of the Middle East, where oil is extracted from vast underground reservoirs. From the wellhead, it moves through a sprawling network of pipelines toward coastal refineries. At massive industrial complexes, crude is heated, distilled, processed. Finished products, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, chemical feedstocks for consumer goods. Refined fuel is pumped into enormous port storage tanks, waiting for the next step. From coastal tanks, fuel is loaded onto supertankers. Loading is a choreographed operation, taking many hours as millions of barrels are pumped aboard. Once full, tankers begin their voyage, joining the queue for the Strait of Hormuz. They navigate the choke point, then enter the open ocean, steaming days or weeks toward Asia, Europe, the Americas. At the destination, ships offload into storage tanks. From there, distribution flows through local pipelines and trucks to gas stations, airports, industrial consumers. The supply chain is designed for efficiency, not resilience. There's very little slack. Time is the most critical element in a Hormuz crisis. The world's financial markets act as the nervous system of the global economy, and they watch the strait with hawk-like intensity. The instant news breaks of a credible attack or a blockage, an immediate and powerful cascade begins. Automated trading algorithms would execute trades in milliseconds. Trigger words flash: Hormuz attack blockade. The price of oil futures wouldn't just climb, they'd leap upwards in minutes. Insurance companies would spike premiums or refuse coverage. Commerce seizes up not from a physical barrier alone, but from a financial one. Physical effects follow quickly. Ships approaching the strait would slow, stop, await instructions. A massive maritime traffic jam forms in the Gulf of Oman and Persian Gulf. Tankers en route would be rerouted where possible. For Gulf oil, there are few alternatives. Pipelines carry some capacity, but far less than the 20.5 million barrels per day by sea. Detours like sailing around Africa add weeks and huge fuel and charter costs. The cascade of logistical paralysis begins. Within days, supply tightening becomes palpable. Countries draw down strategic reserves. Nations without reserves face immediate shortages. The most vulnerable industries feel it first. Airlines cancel flights and raise fares. The chemical industry sees production costs soar. The food supply chain, tractors, trucks, faces crisis. Prices for everything grown, made, or moved spike, hitting small businesses and low-income households hardest. Full closure for an extended period triggers a global recession faster than policymakers expect. The initial price spike is the first domino. Logistical snarls are the second. Widespread industrial shutdown and consumer panic are the third. The persistent vulnerability of the Strait of Hormuz has spurred a search for technological and strategic solutions. New technologies may offer some hope. To truly grasp the geography, one must think in three dimensions. The strait is not just narrow, it is also relatively shallow in parts. The deep water channels required by the largest tankers, with their massive drafts, are even more constricted than the 21-mile surface width suggests. It's like looking at a cross-section of the pipe. Only the very center is deep and wide enough for the biggest vessels. This bathymetry, the underwater topography, funnels traffic into predictable and easily targeted paths. This makes the job of those defending the strait harder, and the job of those seeking to disrupt it easier. Every tanker captain is acutely aware of the depth beneath their keel as they navigate this unforgiving underwater landscape. Inside these colossal ships, a different kind of anatomy is at play. Their hulls are divided into a series of cavernous tanks, each holding thousands of barrels of oil. Below the main deck, a labyrinth of pipes connects these tanks to powerful pumps. On the deck, a complex array of valves and monitors allows the crew to manage the cargo. The crew itself is a small, highly trained team on watch 24 hours a day. They know that a small fire in the engine room can disable the ship. A steering failure can cause it to drift into the opposing traffic lane. A single disabled supertanker, stranded in the wrong place at the wrong time, can act like a cork in a bottle, creating a maritime traffic jam that stretches for miles and halts the flow of energy to the world. The global energy system became dependent on fewer, larger, and more critical nodes. The world economy now leans heavily on the uninterrupted flow of a small number of very large ships through a handful of very narrow choke points. The Strait of Hormuz is the most important of them all. Its history is no longer just a regional concern. It is a story of global interdependence and vulnerability. How much oil flows through this gate? On an average day, approximately 20.5 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products pass through. That's about 1/5 of global oil consumption. It is the fuel in your car's gas tank. It is the jet fuel that lets planes cross continents. It is the feedstock for the plastics in your home. It is the power for the factories that build our world. A vast portion of energy flows through this single, vulnerable choke point. The world's reliance is absolute and unforgiving. If the strait were to close, the world would feel the impact almost instantly. The effect would be a sudden, violent shock to the system. The flow of tankers would cease. Oil refineries across Asia would see supplies evaporate. Europe, North America, crude oil prices would skyrocket in hours as panic grips markets. Global supply chains would begin to slow within a day. Airlines might ground flights. Factories could idle within a week. The global economy is a complex machine that moves on the steady flow of energy. The Strait of Hormuz is one of its most critical valves. If it closes, the machine grinds to a halt. Production end storage tanks hold only days of supply. Consumption end tanks hold only days of supply. Some developed nations keep strategic petroleum reserves, underground caverns. Many developing nations lack such reserves, leaving them exposed. If tanker flow through the strait slows or stops, reserves shrink fast. A disruption of just days can cause shortages and pain at the pump. The system depends on constant movement, a global just-in-time delivery. There is no central warehouse. The warehouse is the fleet of tankers at sea. That minimizes storage cost, but makes the system fragile. The production line has no buffer. Attacks can be swift and varied. Sea mines laid in channels, anti-ship missiles fired from coastal batteries, or cyber attacks that blind navigation and communications. The 2026 Escort protocols are a necessary, robust response. They provide a significant layer of defense, but they cannot eliminate risk entirely. Sheer volume of traffic compounds the problem. Asymmetric tactics leave the gauntlet perilous. The Shadow Fleet makes friend versus foe nearly impossible to discern. It injects chaos into a system that depends on order. Naval escorts can deter many attacks, but they cannot stop every concealed mine, every surprise missile, or every secret ship sailing in the dark. The passage through Hormuz remains a high-stakes journey, truly high stakes. Advanced satellite surveillance systems, artificial intelligence for earlier warnings, autonomous maritime drones on the surface, autonomous maritime drones underwater, mine and threat detection. On the energy front, a more aggressive global push toward cleaner fuels and electric vehicles can, over the long term, reduce overall dependence on oil. Building up larger strategic petroleum stockpiles in more countries could also help soften the blow of a temporary disruption. However, the challenge of the Shadow Fleet reveals a more difficult truth. Technology and treaties are only as effective as the willingness of nations to enforce them. The existence of a parallel, illicit shipping network demonstrates that as long as there are states willing to flout international norms, there will be ways to create chaos and instability. Naval escorts are a powerful deterrent, but they cannot be everywhere at once. They require broad international cooperation, clear and robust rules of engagement, and sustained political will, all of which can be in short supply. The geography of the Strait of Hormuz is unchanging, small, narrow, and shallow in critical places. Yet, as history has repeatedly shown, small places can wield immense power over vast systems. The strait is a physical manifestation of globalization's double-edged sword. It is a conduit of prosperity that ties the economic health of a factory worker in Ohio to the political decisions made in Tehran and Riyadh. It is the place where local and regional conflicts can instantly become global crises. The price of gasoline in London is directly linked to the safe passage of a tanker through this 21-mile gap of water. The next time you stand at a gas pump and fill your car, take a moment to think of that thin stretch of sea on the other side of the world. Think of the colossal ships and the small crews who guide them through the crowded lanes. Think of the naval escorts that stand guard, watching the horizon. And think of the hidden ships that sail in the dark, a constant, unknown variable in a fragile equation. That narrow line of water holds the power to slow a city, to stall a country, and in a matter of days, to stop the world. Human ingenuity built the complex systems that move oil across the globe. It is now up to human foresight and cooperation to build the tools and strategies to protect them. We can plan for a more resilient future, or we can simply wait for the next bright flash and the sound of a clock ticking down to zero. Logistics is the invisible heartbeat of our civilization. If you want to go deeper into the machines, the systems, and the global arteries that power our world, subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. Join the network. Like this video to help the algorithm map our reach across the digital grid. And we want to hear from you. Comment below. What is the most complex supply chain you've ever encountered? Or tell us which industrial marvel we should deconstruct next. The system only works if we understand it. Stay informed, stay ahead.